Your Partner in Success Radio is a free business podcast with host Denise Griffitts. It's all about great stories, conversation, and context to help you move your business and life forward with actionable tips and advice from her guest experts. To listen and subscribe, just find us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you consume your podcasts.
Morning and welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio. I am your host, Denise Griffitts, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today and every day. This podcast is ranked in the top 2% of the most popular podcasts globally, and that's all because of my truly incredible guests. They are fascinating. And our topic today is unlocking the power of personal branding, insights from Paige Arnof-Fenn, and she is the founder of Mavens Moguls. I love that. And it's a leading branding and digital marketing firm. Now, with a background in finance and an MBA from Harvard Business School, Paige transitioned into marketing, working with major companies like Procter Gamble and Coca-Cola before starting her own agency. And today, Paige joins us to discuss what I consider, and I think she does too, the crucial role of storytelling in marketing. She believes that effective communication through storytelling can greatly boost a brand's visibility and enhance customer engagement. And with a blend of analytical skills, obviously, MBA from Harvard, and creativity, Paige is dedicated to developing marketing strategies that truly resonate with target audiences. Paige, good morning. Welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio. And listen, before we get started, I've got questions. I'll be peppering you with them. Before we get started, can you share with our audience a bit about yourself and how you like to show up in the world?
Thank you so much, Denise, for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you and your audience today. Well, how do I show up? Every day is an adventure. So, you caught me on a very upbeat, beautiful fall day. So today I am kind of bouncing and energetic. My background, as you said, I started my career on Wall Street in the 1980s and kind of rebranded myself to be a marketing person. And I had my kind of first chapter of my marketing career in corporate America at companies like P&G and Coca-Cola. And then when the internet took off, I kind of got hooked and headed up marketing at 3 very successful .com startup brands. And they all ended up being survivors and had good exits. And then 23 years ago, I hung out a shingle and started my own firm. And I think, how you show up as an entrepreneur and business owner is kind of everything. What you see is what you get. And I think to attract the best colleagues and clients, you have to kind of show up in a way that is magnetic and charismatic and authentic to you. And so I feel like, I kind of pick myself up and dust myself off and put on my game face and attack the world with energy and enthusiasm every day. And I love what I do, and I hope that comes through.
Talking just a little bit in the virtual green room, and I was concerned that I was going to be 2 minutes late. I was 2 minutes early because I hate being late. And I remember telling you that, I wake up every day thinking, I got this. And then I realized I don't got this, but I keep on going anyway. So I don't let it stall me out. And I think that's what you're saying that you do as well. You're just excited to get up and go help people.
Exactly right. And I think, you and I are alike in that regard. The saying that if you're on time, you're late. I always like to be a few minutes early too. That's just kind of part of my DNA.
It bothers me. I mean, it really does. I'm internally embarrassed if I'm either right on time or not early. And it's ridiculous because I did get there, but still I feel bad. So it's just one of those personality quirks. I've got so many things that I wanted to chat with you about, but I love what you just said, and I wrote this down, magnetic and charismatic. And I'll be honest with you, I see that woefully lacking or entirely missing in a lot of branding. And I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah, I think the important thing is it's got to be authentic to you. I don't think you can fake that. But I think if you put out there, you know, consistent with your core values, consistent with the kind of type of business you want to attract, consistent with your strengths and your experience, um, I think, you know, when you put it out there, I think that's kind of what you get back. And, you know, I think not everybody needs to be super positive or Pollyanna. I think there's a market for people who are kind of have a dry sense of humor and people who are a little snarkier. But I think you need to pick your lane and be the best person in your lane so that, you know, the people that are looking for a resource and a service or a product like yours, they find you. And you know, if your message resonates with them, if they see in you the qualities that they are looking for or the gaps or holes that they're trying to fill, they're going to remember you and stick with you every time. But, you know, consumers and customers are pretty savvy and they can tell when somebody's like heart's not in it, they're not genuinely passionate, or they're just being a copycat. Nobody wants to kind of deal with a me too. I think people like dealing with the original and people who are really comfortable in their own skin and that really embrace the things that make them unique, special, and different.
Talking about when you found the internet, when it came. Look, I bought a computer, giving my age away. I bought a computer when it was MS-DOS. There was no internet, not available to us, you know, as consumers. It was to the military, I think, but I had to have it. It was a $3,000 boat anchor. I still have the manuals. They were in my office closet, but I had to have it. And you know why? Because I knew in my heart, in my soul, I knew that someday I was going to make a living with computers. And I do. And
it has changed
it.
the world.
It has. It very much has.
You know, the Apple Macintosh got very popular when I was in college. And so that was what a lot of my friends bought and owned. My first computer wasn't until I went to graduate school. And they were called laptop computers at the time, but I swear it was like a 50-pound brick. I guess I'm glad I was like young, strong, and healthy because that thing would break my back today.
I still have it. I built my first website. It was 1,000-page, ultimately, it was 1,000-page over time holiday website that I sold a number of years, and I built it on a laptop. And you're right, it was thick, it was heavy. I hauled it everywhere. It never got out of my eyesight. It was mine. I had to have it. But you know, and then if, you know, when I first started building websites, we couldn't. And this kind of goes back to what you were talking about. Are you authentic? Are you the same person you were when you started out? Because I remember when I started building websites for people, first of all, we didn't have graphical user interface. That didn't come until later. Oh God, when WordPress came along, I was like, oh, there is a God. I was so happy. But we could do dark background with white text, or we could do white background with dark text. That was pretty much it. And then we could add a picture or two. And when you said that, I started laughing because I remember, and I bet you do too, the only images we would see would be, you know, somebody faking it like they were a banker. They're standing in back of their leather chair, and there's a portrait of their grandfather behind the wall. It was all so fake, but that's what everybody did. Not authentic.
Right. No, there was a lot of stock photography and people used the same images. So you'd see it on 12 different sites of like business people shaking hands, business people around a conference table. And yeah, nobody really buys it. They all know it's fake and staged.
So important to, you know, go back to what you're talking about. Being authentic. Listen, I'm the same snarky person I was 20 years ago when I started this. That has not changed, and it's not going to. But I get to talk with, you know, people like you every week, and you become my mentors. There's no question about it. I learn, I take notes and I follow you, and you're my mentors. I mean, that's really how it works. So now that I've, gotten that out of my system, let's talk about the importance of an online presence, because, you've got some key lessons that we had to learn about the importance of online presence during the COVID pandemic.
Absolutely. So I think if we learned anything around the early pandemic days, it's that if you don't exist online, if you're invisible online, you literally are invisible. You do not exist. And I think the mistake a lot of small business owners make is, I've had companies reach out to me and say, I'm not famous. I'm not LeBron James or Serena Williams or Beyonce or Taylor Swift. Like, I'm not really anybody important. I just have my small little business here. Do I need to really think of myself as a brand, or do I need a website, or should I be blogging, or do I need to have a Facebook account? And, I guess I hope that at the end of our conversation today, the audience realizes everybody's a brand today. You don't really have the option to think of yourself as just like a little old, it's just little old me. Nobody really cares. That's not really true, because it doesn't matter whether, you have a small business, you have a product or a service business. You have to be branded today, because if you're not a brand, you're a commodity, and commodities compete on price. And if you're in that game, that's kind of a race to the bottom. If the only thing that you can do is cut your price to get more business, that's not sustainable. And you cannot build a healthy business that way. So brands connect with your audience on an emotional level. A brand is a promise of a consistent experience that people can expect when they use your product or service. So I think branding is really important. And I had a professor in business school that used to say marketing is everything and everything is marketing. And I used to giggle when he said it, because I thought, don't take yourself so seriously, because it was a marketing class. But now, the longer I've been doing this, for decades, I think he was absolutely right. Marketing is the bag that holds all the marketing tools in the toolkit. And branding, positioning, messaging, market research, public relations, advertising, those are all things you can do to promote your product or service. And everybody needs, to put their best face forward. So what we try and do is to help organizations find the right words and pictures to tell their story in a compelling way, so that they can sell more of their products and services faster. But you need a business model behind that. So you need a brand that people can remember, so that when they have a problem that you can help them solve, that they think of you first and not your competition.
That's something really important there about marketing. And I get a lot of people say, Denise, you talk on this podcast about sales. You talk about marketing. Aren't they the same? No. And I'm kicking it back to you. You take that one, if you would.
So, it's a continuum. You cast a wide net to reach a lot of people. And so marketing's job is to put a bunch of prospects at the top of the funnel. And then you have to, kind of answer their questions and build the story and help them decide, as they go down that funnel, answering their questions and showing them, how they could use your product and service, what the benefits are, what the features are. And so then at the bottom of the funnel is where they convert and you sell them on what it is you're selling, what it is you've got that is going to solve their problem. So marketing and sales are arm in arm. It's, two sides of the coin. I think when marketing does a great job, sales closes deals faster. So you really want them to be in sync. You want them to work together. not to be at odds or be competitive about it. You know, every good organization I've ever worked with, all of my early jobs at P&G and at Coca-Cola, the marketing and salespeople, you know, we were all on the same team trying to, you know, convince our audience that our products were the superior choice. So I always think, you know, again, people don't like to be sold to. They love to buy stuff, but they don't want to feel like they've been sold things. So start a natural conversation, you know, be transparent. Tell them about why your product or service, your solution is superior. What is it that you can do to benefit your audience? I think where a lot of businesses kind of go wrong is they want to talk about all their features. I have this shiny object and this shiny object, and you know, I've got it's this big and this heavy and this, you know, these many colors. It's not about the features. It's about how it benefits your audience. What's in it for them, not you. So you got to kind of look through the lens of the people buying what you're selling and figure out what it is that they need to know, what's going to make their life easier, more convenient, save them money. And once you get to that kind of insight, that's when the magic happens. But you can't be pushing, because people don't want to be pushed around. They want to be educated, they want to be informed, they want to be entertained, but they want to make a decision, and you need to make it as easy for them as possible. Again, a lot of organizations, you know, they almost put together too many ideas, too many choices. And just think about it when you're walking down the aisle at the grocery store. If you want a certain product, and there are 25 products on the shelf, you're just overwhelmed. Like, how do you even decide? Where do you go? And it's sometimes just easier to say, you know what, screw it. I don't need it that bad. I don't want to work that hard to figure it out. But if there are only 3 or 4 options, you're like, oh, okay, well, do I want the big size, the medium size, or the small size? Do I want the spicy one or the sweet one? Do I want the shiny one or the matte one? So if you narrow the choices, it just makes it easier for them to kind of go down that decision tree and decide this is really what's going to make the choice, you know, easy to decide. That's what you want to make it do for your customer.
I'm listening to you, and I'm always scribbling down notes so I can ask questions, or, you know, intelligent questions, I hope. But I'm remembering that I learned that lesson a very long time ago. Listen, I live in the middle of Cajun country. I'm in Southwest Louisiana. And years ago, many years ago, it was probably in late 90s. I don't even know. This is when I still had TV. I don't watch it. I haven't watched it in years, but I hear this man just yelling from the other room, and I ran out there and I said, what the heck is going on? Here's this very large Cajun man, runs a tire store. He did. I'm sure he's passed on now. And he's in a red jacket, and he's big, and he's loquacious, and he's gesticulating all over the place. He was entertaining to watch. But basically what he said, and he was standing in front of a bunch of tires, he said, tires ain't pretty, but you gotta have them. Well, duh. So I thought, okay, brevity. He made a point. I get it. You have to have them. You know, I'm not going to go look for different types of tires. I want what will fit on my car and I can afford. That's it. That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
But they ain't pretty, but you got to have them. I mean, how great was that?
Yeah, that laser focus, that streamlines everything. And so, you know, if you have a tire problem, he's the guy that's going to pop into your head. So he owns that real estate in this customer's brain. And
that
that's
company
what you
is still
want.
here. He's gone, but you know, it's still in my head.
Exactly.
Probably 30 years ago. So
Bingo.
I don't know. Yeah. But he distilled it down to, here it is. You need them. Come on.
And that's the name of the game. Like, when people need your help, who do they think of? What are the alternatives? Where do they turn to first? And that guy cornered the market, because 30 years later, you still think of him first when you think of tires. That is branding.
And it was personal branding because everybody knew who this guy was.
Exactly.
I mean, you saw him outside in a red jacket, you're like, oh, tires. You knew who you were seeing and what you were seeing. But I wanted to ask you, because we've talked about this a little bit in the pre-interview and in the green room. What are the potential consequences for someone who just deliberately remains invisible online? We chatted about that a bit. What are they afraid to begin establishing their brand? Are they thinking, and you mentioned it, well, I'm not Beyonce, I'm not whatever, Taylor Swift or whatever her name is. I'm a nobody. Well, that's dangerous. When you start thinking like that, that's where you're going to stay.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think great brands are built from the inside out. And I think if you don't have that confidence, if you don't feel like you're brand worthy, if you feel like wallpaper, or, you're just behind the scenes, you have to kind of buck up and come to terms with the fact, you might not want to be the face of your brand. You might want to be a more behind the scenes role. And, I made a very conscious decision when I started my business. I did not want the business to be my name. I didn't want to use my name in the branding, even though I created the quote Mavens and Moguls brand. I know that as the founder and CEO, I'm going to be heavily associated with that brand. But to me, it was about the team and the team dynamics and the collaboration. And so all the messaging, when you go to the website, when you meet with us, if you see me at a conference, it's really the story that's bigger than me. But I think that's what felt authentic to me. And so that's the direction I've taken my company. So I think you have to be really honest with yourself. And if you don't like being the face, maybe you have a business partner and that person is more the front of the house and you're the back of the house. And that's okay. You may not be a comfortable public speaker, but maybe you like writing. Maybe you like being on social media. You don't have to be good at everything. You just need to know what you're good at and what you're better at than anyone else, and then reinforce that in everything that you do. I always say, I learned this from one of my bosses early in my career, everything communicates. It's not just what your brochure says or what you have on your website. Everything communicates. How you look, how you dress, what you drive, what you say. If you have a signature on your email, if you have on-hold music when people call you, all those things contribute to your brand. And so if something seems out of sync or inconsistent, that's not a good way to build a strong connection with your audience. We worked with an animation company in Los Angeles, and you can imagine in LA, in the entertainment industry, there are all kinds of businesses, and there are a lot of animation companies. So what's so unique and special about this one? Well, it was started and run by a woman CEO. So that makes it unusual, because most animation companies tend to be led by males, gamers and, kind of nerdy engineers that like to do programming. This was more of a creative person, more of a producer in the animation field, who happened to be a woman. And her favorite color was red, is red. And she wears red, something red every day. She drives a red car. And when we were working on the brand, the logo, the website, the business cards, the stationery, obviously the color that you're going to use as an accent is going to be red, because that's her color. When she drives up to an event, you see the big red car parking, and she walks in and she's wearing a red jacket or a red scarf, and she's passing out her business cards, and it's got a big red logo. red is her defining color. And when she walks into a room or when she walks into a networking event, which is a hotel room filled with mostly men, it's a woman dressed in red, not a man in a black t-shirt or a black jacket. So, that really became like a defining element of her story. And it was a thread throughout everything that she did. So, when people were thinking about, oh, we need to do some animation for our video, or we want to do an animated, um, you know, uh, something for our brand, if they think about it, they're like, oh, who's that woman with, right? I know exactly, who I want to talk to. So she was getting an awful lot of requests for meetings and proposals because she stood out in a sea of sameness. And I think that's, you want brands that you remember, that you trust, that resonate, that communicate, all the things that you're looking for. And I think when you do that right, you're building a unique, special, and different business where, you can stand out from the pack. And that's a huge thing when it comes to branding.
And I wrote this down too. Everything communicates. And I think I knew that. In fact, I know I knew it. I just had not articulated it the way you just did. But I'm thinking now, because I need to start paying more attention to how other people are branding, what I like, what I don't like. I'm thinking I'm going to open up a document and start taking notes. I was talking with somebody the other day, and it was a pretty serious conversation. I'm trying to get them to fix the mess that had been made. And all I could hear was her children screaming in the background.
And that's what you remember.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. In fact, I actually finally just had to say, I'm sorry. I'm going to call back and speak with somebody else. Your kids you sound like they're having a good time, but they're distracting. And I just can't take it anymore. I didn't say it quite like that, but she got the point.
Absolutely.
And there's just things that, I don't know that the company she was working for, which is a very large company, knows that this is what's going on with some of their people. I hope they find it out, because that was unacceptable to me.
Right. And again, a brand is a promise of a consistent experience. And if you talk to 5 different people at that company and 4 of them had similar distractions going on, music, kids, maybe they're taking a call while they're out and you can hear construction or, loud noises. If that's your experience, that's your firsthand knowledge, then you think, this company really doesn't do a great job. Like the culture is really, they're not thinking about the overall customer experience. And I think of like, the competition when they're trying to figure out how do they stand out. The competition can say, our attention is on you. When you're dealing with us, you have my undivided attention. A lot of our competitors may seem distracted. They may put you on hold. They may have other things going on in the background. That's not us. We put our customers first. And that's one of our core values, that we want to be here for you. And everyone's going to know what they're talking about if they're familiar with the category, because I'm guessing you're not the only one that had that experience.
I had to make 3 phone calls to this company yesterday. 2 of them were not good. One, the girl she's from India and she had an attitude, really had an attitude. I finally just said, listen, you have a nice day. When I get real polite, it's time for you to move to another zip code for a little while. I Ellie made her to death. You have a nice day now, you hear? And I hung up on her. And then I get the next girl. And then finally I got a gentleman who actually spoke English. And I went, thank goodness. And listen, I don't have anything at all against people who, English is their second language. God bless them. They're speaking more languages than I can. But don't get nasty about it. And sometimes they do.
Yeah, no, I mean, you get one chance to make a great first impression.
Exactly. That's
And if
exactly
you
right.
don't make a good first impression, it's going to cost a lot of time and a lot of money to make that right. So, as you said, it doesn't need to be perfect, but people need to try and they need to be kind of accessible and um, open to trying to help, especially in an organization where customer service, is part of the overall relationship. If you have bad customer service experiences, that's going to negatively impact your brand because people aren't going to trust you. They're going to know every time I need help and I have to deal with their online help or dial their 800 number, it's going to be a disaster. I'm going to end up frustrated. Even if you're cheaper, they're not going to buy it because it's going to be so frustrating. People don't mind paying for brands that offer great value. And so, think about the user experience, the customer experience. You can charge a premium if you're a brand because people have that connection and they know they can count on you. When you think about brands that you love, it could be McDonald's or Starbucks. Every time you walk into one of those stores, you know what's going to be on the menu and you know what you like. You don't have to re-educate yourself every time. And you know what the decor is going to look like. You just have an idea of what that experience is going to be like and how it's going to make you feel. If you're tired and you want to put your feet up and relax with a cup of coffee, or if you're hungry, you just need a break before your next meeting or appointment, you know that what you can count on at a McDonald's and Starbucks. But imagine if every time you were in a different city, that it had a totally different like menu ambiance. It would be so frustrating. You would not feel relaxed. You would not be able to just order your favorite cappuccino or frappuccino or Big Mac or, fish or whatever, because you wouldn't know that, they do it their way in that state. And that can be very exhausting and frustrating. And there's no carryover benefit to the brand that you thought you knew. So you have to be very conscious of that in whatever category you compete in, that your customer has an idea of what it's like to experience your brand, and you want to over deliver and make sure that they have a great experience, because today, with all the social media platforms, if people don't have a good experience, it's very likely that they're going to go on to Twitter, X, or Facebook, or your website, and they're going to complain. And that can really be a disaster in this world of, highly connected technology. Because if they start talking about a bad experience with one of your employees or one of your products or services, and people start piling on, that can really damage your brand. It can damage, if you're a public company, it can hurt your stock price, it can hurt your market share, and your competitors can use it against you. And so you really have to be careful today to not let that get away from you.
Time on Trustpilot, because I want to know what I might be buying, or I want to know what I did buy that went sideways and I should have gone to Trustpilot to start with. So bad, Denise. But I'm so glad you're talking about customer service and customer experience, because they really are two different things. I've seen some people, we've got great customer service. Your customers don't think so.
Right.
So you may want to back that one down a bit.
Right. No, again, that comes down to authenticity, because what you say, if you don't deliver on that, people will call you out on it. And, once you lose someone's trust, again, it's a lot more timely and expensive to win it back. So you really have to be careful as you're building these relationships that they're grounded in reality and authenticity. that you really do care about your audience and how they feel and what's working. And sometimes things, people know that it's human error. There are mistakes that can be made, and it happens. And just because it was a mistake does not mean it's going to be fatal. You can use those opportunities when something falls through the cracks or it doesn't work out to really almost double down by being really transparent, explaining to your customer, we are so sorry that happened, and make it right and show them how you learned from it. You're never going to let it happen again. And those people can become champions and advocates and ambassadors for your brand. They can go on social media and say, you're not going to believe this company. I had a glitch and I called them, and not only did they fix it, but they did X, Y, and Z. And I like them even more than before this mistake, because they just pivoted and took care of it so professionally, and they're a better company than I even recognized. And that becomes the conversation online. And when you do that, you've got a customer for life, and those stories become viral. On the other end, if you don't rectify it and you don't deal with it head on, you try and brush it under the carpet, that could backfire and take on a life of its own and live on social media forever, so that when people Google and find out, if you ever have a bad experience with a company, you go into Google and you say company XYZ sucks, or, I hate company XYZ. And sometimes a lot of stuff comes up when you do that, and you're like, oh my goodness. And like you said, there's sites like Trustpilot where they capture all those stories. And if you've got that digital dirt out there, people, you can't hide from it. People are going to know, they're going to remember, and it will live online forever.
At the very top of the show, we talked about COVID and we talked about invisibility, not all at the same time, but I wrote them down together. When COVID started, and I'm a web developer by trade, I'm always looking at other people's work, thinking, oh, that's really good, or, ooh, what were they thinking? It just depends on what's going on. And I realized pretty quickly that a number of companies that I knew fairly well had just disappeared. They panicked. They didn't know what to do. They didn't jump out in front of it. They didn't get out there and say, listen, our office is shut down, but you can still reach us. Here's our number. Here's our email. We are still here. We are working. And I remember being kind of bossy and shooting notes to people saying, you need to get out in front of this. You need to go on your website and explain that you're still around, that you're not hiding in a closet. They didn't know. They didn't know that they had to show up and say, we're okay, you're okay, we've still got your insurance policy, whatever it was. And they just went silent, which was the worst thing they could have done. And a lot of them are now gone, right? They're just gone.
For sure. And, you raised such a good point. And things like a global pandemic, it shouldn't take that to separate the good from the bad, but absolutely. So one of my hobbies is knitting. I'm a terrible knitter, but I love doing it. And during the pandemic, there are many knitting stores around the country that I've frequented in my travels and in my course of life, places I go to regularly, and I know the knitting stores I like. And I will tell you, it was stunning to me to see the difference between the knitting shops that did well and thrived during the pandemic, and like you said, other ones just shut down and disappeared, never to be heard from again. And I think you can look at two different organizations given the same set of circumstances. One knitting store saw the pandemic, shut their doors, and said, nobody's going to come in and go shopping here anymore. We might as well shut down. And within a few months, they no longer existed, and they had been around for decades. On the other extreme, there was a knitting store that I love, that I've frequented many times, and they took their monthly newsletter and turned it into a weekly newsletter. They started doing online classes And they started running these programs where people could knit together in Zoom groups online and have social knitting during the pandemic. And there was a group of people that were making sweaters and a group of people that were making baby clothes. So all different kind of subgroups. And her sales skyrocketed because people had time to, do their hobbies when everyone was sheltering in place and being careful before the vaccines came out. And some of those knitters just thrived, and they were going through yarn faster than they ever had. They'd found these social groups online, and there are groups to this day. Even the stores have reopened and people have gone back to going inside shopping. And there are people that are still keeping their Zoom groups together, which is phenomenal. And so, you have examples of one business that just thrived and embraced it, and another one that just fell apart. And you can look at that in so many different categories. And like the conference business, all the face-to-face in-person conferences shut down for a long time. Some of them never came back. Some of them have now kind of pivoted to a hybrid model where they get together maybe once a year in person, but then they do online conferences in between the physical ones. And, people don't have to travel. They can do stuff in spurts online. And I just think it shows you the companies that can kind of pivot and stay relevant and do things in a more creative way. And when they do that well, that's just, it makes them kind of more relevant and busier and better than they ever have been. So, kind of keep your antenna up and look for those companies that have learned to do things creatively in a way that has made their business just boom. And, a global pandemic, not only did it not slow them down, it was like the kick in the pants they needed to take their business to a completely different level.
The thing about stores, listen, I'm an introvert. I don't like to be out and about. If I do get out and about, I've got my black cap on, I've got my black Ray-Bans on, and I've got my resting bitch face on. That doesn't work in the Deep South. People still want to say, hey, how are you? And they want to give you a hug. So I'm used to that. But I learned pretty quickly during all of this, and I didn't have to go anywhere anyway, but I learned who I could trust. And what I started to say, and I distracted myself a little bit, was that if you're going to a knitting store in a certain town and you can't any longer, but you have invited people from all over the globe to join you on Zoom. And remember, we all had Zoom fatigue at one point there. I got so sick of it. But, now you've opened up a whole new area of people who can find you, buy from you, work with you, learn from you. You're not just in one geographical location.
Absolutely. And the knitting store that I was using as a positive example. So e-commerce, obviously they were selling all their yarns through the website online, which you could pick out, and you could call the shop and they would, you could do like a, WhatsApp or Facebook, and they could show you on their smartphone the yarn you were looking at or the accessories. And, and for the local people that, felt like e-commerce, they didn't want to pay for shipping. They said, you tell us what you want, give us your credit card number. You drive over here, pop your trunk, and we'll just stick it in your car. You don't need to get out of the car. You don't need to come inside if you're not comfortable shopping internally yet. We'll just bring it out to you. No problem. It's, we'll take care of it. And again, they were creative and scrappy, and, their business ended up flying off the shelves. They couldn't keep the yarn in stock. And in a weird way, COVID's probably the best thing that ever happened to that business, because as you said, instead of dealing with a local community, they're now a global provider. They are a, world recognized yarn store that is in this sleepy little town that no one had ever heard of before.
And they found multiple ways to serve their customers in ways that suited what the customers needed, not what they had, not what they wanted to do, what the customer needed.
Bingo.
Yeah. And I'm laughing, you're talking about knitting. My grandmother was this tremendous crocheter, and I still have some of her little knitted hats that she wore before she passed away. I've got them in a box in my closet. And she tried to teach me how to knit and how to crochet. I'm ambidextrous. We could never figure out what hand I was supposed to be using. So finally she just said, "Oh, to heck with it. Do you need anything?" I said, "Yeah, I need a beanie." And she'd just do it for me.
That's
I
so
miss
cute.
her. I know. She wore pink. I hate pink. So, she would have to make other colors for me. But, it's funny the things that, and you're right, and COVID, as awful as it was, made a lot of changes in how we brand, how we serve, how we take care of our customers and our consumers, or it didn't. So it really was kind of up to us as business owners how we were going to step up and say, "Hey, we're still here. This is what we can do from you. What do you need from us? We're going to ask you questions. How can we help?"
Bingo. No, you're absolutely right.
Ask you too. So, and we're talking about, now this is a global store, which I love, authentic platforms. My question is, how can individuals determine what social media platforms are authentic to their personal brand? Because look, people will say, "Oh, I need to start podcasting. Where do I go?" You go where your audience is. That's always my answer. Where's your audience? If it's B2B, you're going to go to, LinkedIn. If it's something else, you might go to TikTok. Yeah, but how do people find their platform so they're not just overwhelmed and they're serving an audience that's actually looking for them, I guess is my real question.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question because it's so easy to get overwhelmed with social media and technology because it's always on 24/7. And one of the biggest mistakes I see that small businesses make is that they spread themselves too thin. I'm a big believer in you need to pick your battles. Like, think about all the tools and technologies that are out there. You absolutely do not need to be everywhere. In fact, you only need to pick one or two that are authentic to you and go deep in that. When blogging got big, I had a lot of clients who said, maybe I should set up a blog. Can you help me? My first question was, do you like blogging? Because if you don't like to blog, if you're not someone who really likes to write and respond and be consistent on a blog, then you absolutely should never start a blog. Because what happens is people come out of the blocks on week one and they're so excited and they do 3 blog postings and, they're just all, they're really long. They just can't say enough about whatever topic they want to touch on the first week. So they do 3 different long postings. The second week, things are a little busy and they got distracted. So they only did 1 blog post. The third week, they were traveling on the road at a conference and they came back. They were busy getting caught up. So they actually didn't blog at all on the third week. On the fourth week, they were kind of distracted because they had some other stuff going on, but they threw up kind of 1 good blog post and then started to do another one and then just kind of cut their losses. And so you can see where this is going. Very inconsistent. And you're training your audience to see that you don't really follow through. You're not very consistent. So, you're flaky. You're not that thorough. You don't seem to enjoy it. And you're not even responding to the people that are commenting on the blog. So that's kind of a blogging disaster. And if that is a risk you do not want to take, what I would recommend and what I like to do, I like writing, but I don't want the pressure of having to post on a blog a couple times a week, every week, check it daily to make sure people aren't making comments that are getting ignored. So what I do is I go to other people's blogs that are very well respected in my category, and I follow their blog. And when they talk about something that I have an opinion on, I'll chime in. I'm very happy to kind of talk about things that I know a lot about and I have a perspective on. But there are a lot of topics that are not my sweet spot, so I just ignore. So if you don't like, kind of carrying the torch for a blog, then just be that smart voice that chimes in. And every time you make a comment, put your signature in there, and you're building your brand to be the smart person on your industry blog. Like, wow, every time Denise makes a comment, I agree with her. She is so smart. And then they keep seeing your name and your link under your name, and they go, I should check out Denise's website, and then they kind of go that path. And they go, that Denise, she is really good at what she does. The next time I have something, I'm going to reach out to her directly. That's the way to use a blog. If your audience is on Facebook and they're looking for you on Facebook, then by all means be on Facebook. But for me, Facebook would be a complete distraction. None of my clients are looking for me on Facebook. My audience is on LinkedIn, as you said. That's a B2B platform, very professional. It's great for thought leadership. You can post content and articles. So for me, I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Twitter X. I'm not on Instagram, Twitch, TikTok. I'm really doubling down on LinkedIn. But again, that is authentic to me. So I would just encourage the listeners today to really think about what you love doing, what shows your best face forward to your audience, where are people going to learn more about you and to check you out, and stick to those platforms. Don't get distracted. Don't spread yourself too thin, because what happens is, if on Facebook you're one image and then you're someone completely different on LinkedIn, and then you have a completely different angle on your blog, the problem is people don't know which version of you is going to show up. If they want to meet you for a meal or coffee or invite you onto their podcast, are you going to be the upbeat, happy one? Are you going to be the real social butterfly? Are you going to be snarky? Because that is not a way to build, to use your brand to build authentic relationships. Because people want to know who's going to show up for the meeting, for the podcast, at the conference. So I would just encourage people, do your due diligence, do your homework, figure out where you can be your very best self and showcase your strengths, and then stick to that.
And I got kicked out of Facebook after 19 years. I have no idea why. My business pages are still there. My feline office assistant group is still there. I've still got Instagram, but I no longer personally, exist on Facebook. And for about a week or so, I was just about half hysterical. And then I went, this is fun. I don't have to be there all the time. Now I don't care if they ever restore it. I'm spending a lot more time on LinkedIn. And what you were saying about blogging, let's just substitute the term podcasting there. And exactly what you described. People are saying, and I'll go into Reddit and I'll peek around to see what they're saying, because podcasts pop up every single day. There's so many of us out there now. When I started 16 years ago, I think I was one of 10 people. That's an exaggeration, but there weren't many of us. And I'm looking at people go, okay, I've got 10 episodes in. Where can I find a sponsor? Oh, you have got to be kidding me. Nobody knows who you are. I went and looked at your podcast. You're not consistent. You kind of suck. Why would anybody sponsor you? You're not showing up. So everything you talk about blogging, same thing,
But now you're in the top 2%. So you've been doing something right.
Honestly, it's the sheer consistency. If I tell you I'm showing up on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I show up on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But the God's honest truth is you, my guest. It's not about me at all. It's about me getting you to share your expertise with a very wide audience. And I really love what you said, Paige, about, you'll go to other people's blogs and you'll make comments over there, and you're basically very smartly leveraging somebody else's audience that you didn't have to build. It's very
Bingo.
smart.
You got it.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. That's the name of the game.
Okay, we've got about 10 more minutes. Authentic interactions versus artificial intelligence. Let's talk about that because it's everywhere. We can't avoid it. It is a tool. We do need to use it. And I use AI a lot, but then I rewrite everything they give me in my own voice.
Well, you're doing it right. And that is the key takeaway. I think, every time there's a new shiny object, everybody gets enamored and, there's a stampede. And artificial intelligence, like you said, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. You got to learn about it, do your homework, get your tutorials, but you cannot rely on it as a crutch to do everything for you. For the people that think they can write a prompt and have AI write their newsletter, write the copy for their website, and kind of do the presentation for them, I would just caution you because if you let AI, set the tone and do all the content development, you're going to sound very generic, very robotic. And in this day and age, with everybody kind of the stampede to the robots, I think the way to stand out and to kind of put your best face forward and really connect with people on a human level, it's about authenticity and authentically interacting with your audience, both in person and online. So absolutely, positively, embrace AI so that you don't get left behind, but do not get so sucked into it that you just let it take charge. And I think the way you approach it is exactly right. You can use it to brainstorm, you can use it for a first draft, but then you need to make sure that it's in your voice, the tonality, the values, the messages are yours. They are unique, special, and different in the same way that you are. Because if not, you're just going to kind of blend into a sea of sameness, and no one's going to remember any of it. And again, back to the branding discussion, if you just use AI to do everything, you become a commodity and you're competing on price. And that is not a sustainable business model.
I use AI a lot. I use it daily, but I'm saying, okay, can you create a list for me? Okay, can you give me 20 different things that I can talk about on my podcast? And then I'm like, oh, okay, 3 of them I kind of like. Okay, let's go deeper with that. Then I put it all in my own voice because I'm unique. You're unique. We're all of us unique. And if we're not showing that, people are not going to stick around.
Bingo. No. And the 3 topics that you like, that you have your own take on, that you've got your own perspective and your own stories, that's what people are going to remember. Those 17 other topics that they came up with that are so generic that are going to get lost in translation, no one's going to remember, and they're certainly not going to remember that you had anything to do with it. Don't waste your time on that. Move on. Find the things where you have a hook that you can leverage. And if you do that, you're going to be in great shape. But if you pick the kind of lowest common denominator that anybody could talk about it and it's just all generic, there's no sense in you doing a podcast on that or writing an article on that or pretending like you can be a thought leader. If it's that generic, no one's going to care. They're not going to read it, and it's going to dilute your brand.
I had 20 choices and I discarded immediately all but 3 of them. It's because they didn't resonate to me either. Why in the world would I even try to write something with that? I didn't like it. It didn't make any sense to me. Quickly, I want we talked a bit in the pre-interview about building connections. My question is, how can businesses effectively build connections and relationships with their audience in order to stand out in an increasingly competitive environment? We've covered a bit about that, but do we need to just kind of shorten it and condense it and say, do this, don't do this, don't do that?
So I think in terms of building connections, again, it kind of comes back to authenticity. What are the things that you genuinely enjoy? And, you can connect with people on a bunch of different levels, personally and professionally. I think there are a lot of people that, even though they run for-profit small businesses, they volunteer for a lot of nonprofits. And so you can get to know people that are very simpatico, that are like-minded and care about some of the same causes you do. If you join a nonprofit committee or a nonprofit board, those are people that you're going to connect with on a deeper level because you share a lot of values, which is great. There's some people that are athletic and maybe they have a tennis group or a pickleball group or whatever, and you're going to meet people who, again, are like-minded and simpatico. On the business front, there are lots of business networking organizations in whatever community you live in. You can join that, and you can do it by function. You can do it by industry or category. There are a lot of alma mater groups, people that you went to the same college or graduate school with. So I'm a big believer, and we talked about having hobbies. I've met amazing people through my knitting circles. And so, some of them are business people and some of them have completely different careers, doctors, lawyers, but you share a love of knitting. So think about all the things that you really enjoy doing and, raise your hand. I used to meet with a group of people that we used to walk together in the afternoons. After work, we would take an hour-long walk at the end of the day, and we would walk and talk and kind of debrief. And I met some fabulous people through that group. If you like Pilates and you do a group Pilates class once a week, you can meet people doing anything that's authentic to you. It shouldn't be something that you have to work that hard to think about, but, join a professional organization, join something that's kind of more maybe academic related or hobby related or sports related, and just do it for the love of the actual thing, the content, and then you will you will end up making connections with like-minded people who enjoy those same things.
And I don't know about you, even when I get podcast guest requests and I get multiples every single day, I can tell pretty much instantly if they're going to share my same or close to my values and principles. If they don't, it's a no. I'm sorry, you can't come
Absolutely.
on the show. I just can't do it.
Right, because it's a reflection of your brand. And, it comes through. If people have listened to a lot of your podcasts, your shows, they go, the reason why it's such a comfortable, natural conversation is because we are simpatico. We're not faking it. It's a win-win. It's good for you. It's good for me. We enjoy chatting, and that comes through. And I think if that's not the case, again, people are pretty savvy. They can hear it. They can tell. If someone's just self-serving and talking all about themselves and not, how they can help the audience, that's not going to make for a very interesting show. And if you built a whole podcast series around that, people wouldn't be listening and you wouldn't be in the top 2%. That's just the way it goes.
Do this. Honestly, I do my podcasting because I am an introvert. I'm a highly committed introvert. But I get to meet people like you from all over the world. And I've got hundreds of books in this room, my office. that were gifted to me, and I've read every single one of them. They came from my podcast guests. This is such a win-win for me. I can't even explain it. You and I were talking about a T-shirt in the green room. It's like, did you buy it yet? Not yet. It's on my list. So we've already had our conversations. We've already become friends. It's just the way it has to happen.
No, and that's why it works. That's exactly why it works.
We're rapidly running out of time, and I have to reluctantly let you go, but thank you for being here and for sharing your journey and your insights with us. It's fascinating talking with you. But before we close, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience, and where can people connect with you?
So I've loved it. It's been so fun chatting with you, Denise. Thank you again for having me. Anyone that wants to continue the conversation, you can go to my website, mavensandmoguls.com. It's mavensandmoguls.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, even though my last name is hyphenated. It's all smushed together on LinkedIn, PAIGEARNOFFENN. Or, as one of my clients always says, because my company name has an ampersand in between the Mavens and Moguls, and my last name is hyphenated. There are just too many words for her to remember. So she goes to Google and she'll put in Paige and Mavens, and I pop right up. So thank goodness that search engine optimization works, and you can find me that way. But if you do go to my website, I have pages and pages of content. It's all free. Articles, videos, podcasts, where I talk about everything under the marketing umbrella. And I've just got lots of great advice and examples and case studies, and it's all free. So feel free to go there and, kind of lose yourself. And if there are things you want to chat about, you can find me there. Happy to follow up.
Perfect. And in the show notes, I did link to your case studies because they're fascinating. So thank you. So anyway, to our audience, in today's episode of Your Partner in Success Radio, Paige Arnof-Fenn, the founder and CEO of Mavens and Moguls, Paige, I love that name, highlights the increasing importance of online presence in today's digital world. And with her extensive experience in branding and marketing, she believes that everyone has a brand, not just the influencers. And I hate that term. I'll be honest about it. I hate it. Everyone has a brand, and that being visible online is essential for success. And she emphasizes the need for authenticity in personal branding and encouraging individuals to choose platforms that truly reflect who they are. And in a landscape where many rely on AI, artificial intelligence, we discussed how that authentic interactions and personalized content are key to standing out and building meaningful connections with audiences. So if you enjoyed this conversation with Paige as much as I did, I encourage you to connect with her online to explore more of her insights on branding and marketing. Seriously, go to her case studies. And don't forget to visit Apple Podcasts to leave a review and share your thoughts on this episode. Why? Because your feedback helps me reach more listeners. And I will see you next week. Paige, thank you so much. Let's stay in touch.
I would love that, Denise. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. I'll talk with you again.
Take good care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.